Okay, excellent. Let's start. I think it's a bit strange timing for this lecture because I want to have interactive lecture. Talk to you actually. But now I have made all you shut up, gave you something to eat that you don't have time to complain at all. However, let's go through the things, what I prepared, and I hope you will anyway have time to talk to me because I really want to have it a little bit interactive, like to get your feeling, where are you actually with the security and what you have thought about it. My background is I was working for 13 years in the IT infrastructure of the bank where I'm still employed. And was there from architect to the head of the infrastructure team, taking care for the budgets, and of course also deep diving into the network. And my passion was also the storage and networking and a lot of things, especially connected to the Microsoft environment. However, I have changed shortly over a year ago to security, and I'm discovering quite new fields, new fields where I'm dedicating now my time to. Okay, security is something you will hear about everywhere here also. Everybody is mentioning this and that. Before listening to the lecture about Dockers, one of my friends was asking, yeah, okay, you are doing Dockers in production, but how do you secure them? It's a long process. Security is evolving, really evolving in the last time, and there are a lot of steps to be done. The list is long what needs to be done, and we'll go first of all through what is actually security. Doesn't this work? No, it has to be turned on. Okay. We'll go through the list. What actually is security? What am I doing in security? What is my roles? What is my description of security? The security expert or security guy. I don't call myself expert, at least not yet. One thing you might heard already in the past is patching is one of the first things about security. There are a lot of examples where we are actually seen only as a pushers to all the infrastructure guys. Patch this, there's a new vulnerability, you have to patch it. And this is really a little bit pain in the back. Second thing is vulnerability assessment, or we have it together, vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. What's the difference between those two? Vulnerability assessment is you are actually checking what the vulnerabilities applications already have are discovered and are remediated with the patches. With penetration testing, you are taking another approach. You are taking an application, you're checking the communication between the different layers of application and trying to find out what actually is happening there. Is this communication secure? Can I misuse this communication? Is the protocol used secure enough? Is it using the certificates which are secure enough? Is the communication done in the way that you can change the parameters and still get an answer? For example, if you're making the API calls, is inside of the API call itself, not in the data stream, but in the call itself, in the URL, is there already something specified what should not be there? For example, name of the customer, credentials, or whatever. So this is this main difference between those two. Next one is, of course, application testing and source code reviews. This one is huge. Till now, nobody was actually checking the source code, or it was very scarcely checked. But now, you will see what happens. I missed one. I was wrong. Monitoring of infrastructure and security. This was a little bit smaller task, but it also falls under my jurisdiction. Is to check what actually IT guys are doing and if they are doing things right. not from the perspective of monitoring if applications are performing okay, but if they are performing securely. As I said before, we are bothering IT infrastructure guys for the patching, but we are also bothering application guys to remediate this what we have discovered inside of the penetration testing. And one fun part we will maybe see at the end, and of course, is the IT stack intelligence. And here, this is where it gets funny, when it gets interesting, where you get to know what is happening now. There is also a part which needs to be done, and this is user awareness training. This also is a part of IT guy IT security guy to take care of, and this one is really paying off. Time invested there, it's really the time well spent, and I'll give you some stories. In my introduction to this theme, I have mentioned that we will talk about examples, what actually happened in my environment, what was going on, and some fun stories. Do you all remember at the beginning of this year, there were two vulnerabilities which were actually making us scared. You know the name? Spectral and meltdown. Exactly, you can see them here. This is a representation of their code. Meltdown and spectral. What was actually happening there? Is anybody able to explain me what is actually happening?
In short or longer?
Short.
Okay,
I will short.
Okay, but definitely both are relied to predictive jumping in the code. That means the processors try to find out where to jump next, what you will choose, left or right, and they will actually execute both codes. And then, if solution 1 happens, they will give you output of the first one, and the solution 2 happens, they will get the output of the second one. But the idea is actually to give him a code which he will probably not execute as the wrong one, and then force him to jump there, and then you have. Okay, it's not easy to achieve, but it's possible.
Let's go step back.
Okay.
What's happening in the processor? We are trying to secure not only personal data, but also, let's have a simple example of a password when you're typing in. This password you're typing in, you have it masked, you don't see it. But for the execution itself, it has to be decrypted, however encrypted it is. So how processor is working is that when you have a data which processor has to process, this data has to be clear text. Has to be, otherwise processor does not understand it. And when it is processing, before processor receives the information what it has to do, those things are written into the registry of the processor, of the computer, and that's written in a clear text. What the vendors were doing. Okay, one step back. When it's written into the registry, then it's processed, and the output is also written into the registry. Their next step would be, after these steps have been executed, is to give the result back to the rest of the application and discard all what was there written in. What CPU vendors were actually doing in the background is to speed up the processors themselves. They are cutting out one step. They are cutting out the last step, and they are not actually deleting the data in the registers. The right way would be, in the secure computing way, is to either zero it out, to rewrite it with some random data or whatever. And this part of the registry, this in clear text written data is actually still visible therein. If it is not rewritten with another process which is coming. And here is this speculation where it comes. You are actually waiting that there is some data written in, and you are sniffing what there is before it is rewritten with another processing operation. Now, why they were doing this? Yes, of course, it is to have faster processors. On the competing in the world, you know, they were competing Intel to AMD and so on. But not only AMD, we have seen in the reports that actually each and every processor nowadays on the market is vulnerable to this. And this is architectural mistake, or not mistake, it's a shortcut which was discovered, what the vendors were doing. So it is built into the hardware. So far I have not received at all information that this would have been remediated already in hardware. We are still waiting. There are some announcements already that Intel, it might be remediated already. That this will be changed in the hardware, but so far it has not been. As I mentioned, okay, all brands of the CPUs vendors were affected. What was the remediation to this vulnerability?
Okay.
There are several of them. Do you remember? Anybody else besides us?
OS patches, yeah.
OS patches was one of the remediations. The second one was firmware updates. Then there were, especially for the Spectra, there were a lot of patches concerning the web browsers, even some SQL server patches, and so on. So because of the mistake inside the processor, a lot of work needed to be done on the other steps of the application things. I want to show you once more.
Just as a question from a security point of view, sometimes with security, you can fix it by just turning shit off, right? So if it's off, then it's done.
Yeah, okay.
Now, given that there's no hardware remediation, did you come across instances where customers would refresh the hardware in order to fix this particular issue? And if customers were refreshing the hardware, are they protected?
This is a good question.
Thank you very
I
much.
mentioned before.
I get a prize, right?
Unfortunately, not.
You live in
Yeah, of course you get a prize. Yeah.
See?
You already have 4 bottles.
Luckily, I
first
got
time
4
people
bottles.
feel things happening.
I mentioned that we are so far waiting for the vendors to patch their things inside of the CPU. So far it was not done. The only remediation done was firmware updates. We were waiting a lot of time for them. Some, they were even causing us a lot of troubles, even slowdowns. I think there's one lecture tomorrow. There's one presentation on this, what is actually happening. They were making tests tomorrow in the morning, so take a look at this. You want to mention something?
If you disable preemptive jumping,
Yes,
it costs 30%.
definitely.
That means your processor will be 30% slower. You don't want to do that. You don't really want.
Exactly, this is mentioned for the lecture tomorrow. The presentation
They don't,
tomorrow.
but they don't do.
They
Actually,
do.
they don't really close.
Refreshing of hardware was actually not done because it's not existent yet, the hardware which is not using this kind of architecture. So we are still waiting for this. If this will be done, we will see. There's also one fact that so far, besides the proof of concept and some small applications for the Spectra vulnerability, which is easier to patch, has not been on the market. So exploit has not been on the market visible yet. We don't know it at least. And as far as I have intelligence from the darknet, there's also nothing so dramatically happening there yet. But we never know. You know, I was reading the other day an article how long it is from the discovery of vulnerability inside of the operating system or any application till it's actually remediated, patched. What would you say? Before the first person discovers it and it's patched at the end by Microsoft, by whoever it is, Linux kernel, whatever.
1 year?
6 months?
Longer?
Much longer. Average is 5.6 years. This is taking into consideration that on average the vulnerability is discovered by one person or a very small group of persons. Now it might happen that it's happening faster because of faster cadences, but we will still be waiting to see this to be reflected inside of the patching cycles. Some they are of course much faster patched, but something like this, which this vulnerability exists since I think till 1985, 25 years ago, or even more, 30 years ago. This was architectural mistake which has happened, and this we are actually blaming now. One thing I want to show you. You see, here I have, I suppose you know this script, PowerShell script.
You said there's a long period from discovering a vulnerability to being fixed, but how long between discovering it and an exploit being available?
I have a graph. I have a graph because there are 3 periods. I'll come to this back too, of course. I have here, there's a PowerShell script available on the PowerShell gallery. You can download it yourself. There's a short comment, and I just ran it here on my computer to see what it was. It actually goes through the remediation steps which you need to do to be completely compliant with those 2 vulnerabilities, Spectre and Meltdown, right now. So there are a lot of steps which are here being checked. I've been actually counting what all it needs to be checked, and there are more than 30 points where the things are checked. It's a lot. At the beginning there were 3, 4, no more. There were some green points. Now they don't color them anymore. What's good, what's not good, but it should be all true. And this shows the development of the vulnerability which they were discovering. It started small. But it opened like a Pandora's box. We don't really know what is happening there behind. What is still going to be shown in the future? Okay. Okay. Security. They're all talking about the onion approach on the security. Why this is important? I'm sure that we can all agree that there is no secure world in the IT. I mean, the most secure computer or server is the one which is plugged off. Not turned off, it's not enough.
But I can say like this, life is also pretty unsecure as such, you know?
Yeah. So, what is security? Why is security important? I mean, we will never be able to be in, let's say, faster than those bad guys, because we are actually, if you remember, we're using the same tools. Security and bad guys. Metasploit is used for one and another side, depends what hat you are wearing, black, white hat. Mimikatz is used for this. Other testing tools are actually the same tools which they are used for misusing those vulnerabilities inside of an application. And you are never be able to be in front of those bad guys. This is always a match on a knife, as we call it. Once one in front, sometimes we are able to patch before, sometimes not. So we need to take a layered approach to make as many obstacles for the bad guys to have cross that they either run out of time, which they have available, or money for the misusing of your environment. Because nowadays you can buy penetration itself on a black market, on a dark net. This is being sold for a couple hundred of euros. Customized attacks on the customers, and I have seen it. I was talking to the customer, not big customer in Croatia. They have actually had an attack where they were using several vulnerabilities inside of their system. They came in, and this was customized attack. They found out, they did not want to tell me who actually ordered these attacks, because this would not be politically correct, but however, they found out that it was paid for a couple hundred of euros. And the whole system was down. They had a lot of pending trademarks, a lot of information, what they were developing and so on. And at the end of all, they encrypted all the network with one kind of virus which was not in the wild. It was customly built for their environment only. At the end of all, they paid to the bad guys. So the bad guys got paid from those who ordered them attack and from the customer itself that they got it. So layered approach is important. It starts all on the physical layer. You know, if you have access to the server, if I have access to your laptop here, it's much bigger chance that I will be able to misuse it. I can pre-boot, I can take vulnerability inside of a BIOS or the new version, EMSI. It's also UEFI, sorry, UEFI. It's also already being misused. But if I don't have physical access, it all goes fine. There, of course, for us it's important that we also take care for the procedures of development, for the procedures of getting certain rights which users need to have, of course, that they are able to do their work. And we are in awareness. This is the first physical and actually the first steps which you need to do in the security. Policies I forgot to mention. Next one, perimeter security. Under perimeter security, we are talking about firewalls. On one side, firewalls against the outside world and the firewalls against inside world, because we know the companies are not isolated entities from themselves. They at least have access to the internet. Of course, they want to talk to other customers. They have kind of extranet where they are communicating more sensible data to their partners. They have customers logging in from outside, and sometimes, not so rarely, we are actually always part of the bigger corporate environment where similar companies are bound together under this one and the same owner. So also this needs to be, also those perimeters need to be checked.
Even VPN for remote working. Even
Remote
VPN
working is one of them.
one of the major.
Yeah, definitely. Internal network I mentioned a little bit. Now we are coming to the era, I don't know how far your customers and your environments are, but now we are coming to an era where the servers are already separated from the end users. But now we are talking about, okay, we need to separate the servers from themselves. For example, you're separating the database servers away from the middle tier. You're separating the web application servers from the other servers. Similar functioning servers, I don't know, like hosts, you're separating from the other environment. So also the servers between themselves are becoming separate to each other, based on the function which they are based on. With the Dockers and with the microservices, this is even more obvious, and it also needs to be remediated and also be checked. I mean, there's one thing still. Sometimes it's enough that you know where you are insecure, because you are able to present this to your management, to those who are actually paying for your environment, and they are in the role to decide, will they pay you to have the better solution, to have more people to secure this, or will they take a risk for this? So
but even if you have, I'm coming from very high secure network.
Sure.
We are only allowing network connections. No allowed network connection allowed.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is not allowed. Okay,
Sure.
But still, when you have this middle tier, it's not, nobody talks to middle tier. Only the web servers are talking. Yeah?
Yeah.
Middle tier is only talking with database. It's no reason, even if you are not high secure environment,
Yes.
to allow any other communication.
Yeah, but administrators like to have a remote access to it. They like to have checked. There's some vulnerabilities. They like to have SMB access to it because they want to put some scripts on. Of course, there are different environments. There are highly secured environments,
But not
going around. But majority of the customers which I was talking to, they have all in one in the same bucket. They're not thinking about it. I'll show you then why we are talking also about host security. This is what you mentioned. There needs to be done kind of tightening of the security of the default, hardening of the security, thank you, needs to be done. And at the end of all, we are coming to the application security, which is totally new, not new, but for some companies really something what they did not think about till now. And data security, supposing you heard GDPR, it's important what data we have. For some companies, this was already before important. For example, Slovenia, we had a local law which was already pretty similar to the GDPR. It's now just a little bit extending this what we had in mind. I want to show something funny. I suppose some of you might have seen it. Have you seen this film already?
Yes.
Have you? Let me see if I can make loudspeaker.
This is when the guy knows everything about her.
No.
Okay,
No, it's not this one.
Looks so better.
Yeah, thanks, Sasha.
Yeah. No, guys. I'll tell you a story about this.
Spoil the illusion.
Sorry for this.
Cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I was called Papillon,
And what's his name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where did you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School
Oh, when did you graduate?
in 2009.
Oh, good.
It's like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay. And you had this cat for a while?
Yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie. So like a password, there would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1?
Like my birthday,
Oh, what is that?
June
Oh, every month?
95.
Oh, great. So Jolie, 6, 12, 95.
Yes.
Got it.
Right now? No, I cannot do that.
But we all want to know what it is, so we can tell you if it's strong or not.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. Okay, one is Tel Aviv. Yeah. 4, 6, 8, and then Israel. It's only 3, but it's pretty strong enough.
Ireland, 1, 2, 3, 4. Gemma, 1, 2, 3. Spell G-E-M-M.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
What would be an Italian password?
My grandma's name,
What's your grandma's name?
Maria.
Maria. So Maria is your password?
Well, yeah.
So, I was talking about patching
There's no
before.
hope for the human race.
I mean, you can patch servers, you can patch firmware, you can patch hardware, you can patch drivers.
Patch humans as well.
Humans, you cannot patch.
We're talking about
This is the way to do
cybersecurity
it.
today. and-
So let's go on.
Is it not on YouTube? What's the one?
It is from YouTube. I mean, it was also going around the Twitter scene, but
I missed that.
I missed that. There's one more interesting on this thing, but I will mention it. Do you know those letters? Has anybody received kind of those letters in your corporate environment? Look, your password, something. We have received your password, or we have seen. I write you as much. I put a Trojan on a web page with pornography, which you have visited, blah, 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 blah. And I have seen, as mentioned here, yeah. I have switched your camera, webcam on, and I've seen how you have masturbated in front of your camera. Such emails I
That
received.
was a fake. Shit.
What scary moment is, because those passwords, according to my information as I was checking around our environment, at least half of the time true. These are passwords which were actually used. Where did the bad guys get passwords? You all have heard that there were passwords from LinkedIn cracked on one point, Facebook was cracked on one point, and so on. And there they stole, they can buy passwords in for a couple of €100, whole databases. And those they are getting here. They have here their wallet where you can send them money to remediate this. And there are some people who paid for this. They are fake, but this is the cheapest money possible for the bad guys to receive it. I have here environment. I have here an example from our
Are they
environment.
not traceable so that Bitcoin?
It's, you know how it's the Bitcoin wallets. It's not traceable really. So no. I have when I went through our environment. You will notice here up there is one mistake in the right. It's spelled a little bit others. That's why I was able to trace here. I have a bit more than 20 examples of our guys, and you can see all the possible passwords here. And those are some real passwords from our users, not in our corporate environment, but they might be in their private environment. So, what did GDPR bring? I might take a couple of more minutes since I started a little bit later. What did GDPR bring? You all know the Article 32. What does it say? Supposedly not. Here's a small part of it. It says, taking into account the state of the art, the cost of the implementation, and the nature of the scope, context, and purpose of the processing, as well as the risk varying likelihood and severity for the rights and the freedoms of the natural persons, the controller and the processor shall implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk. A lot of words, but matter this, state of the art. What does this mean? All those companies who are dealing with the personal data should use state of the art of technology to protect the personal data of us, EU citizens. It's demanded a lot. What actually is state of the art? I've used here the Wikipedia article. You don't have to read it all, but I want to say state of the art, sometimes also called cutting edge. They're demanding from us, especially in the bank, it's also very high GDPR demands, that we are using the best technology available on the market, which we are able to pay. The last two words I have added myself, because you're not able to pay everything. And this is, that's why it's very, very important. The ICT security has become very important, and also it's very supported from the management down nowadays. But it's not only a question of paying this technology. You have to pay the technology, and once you have it implemented in your environment, you also have to use it. If you don't use it, you have done nothing. Now, demands are huge. GDPR. If you are already at GDPR, I have here an example. I don't want you to read this. This is just an example of the Excel spreadsheet which I have to fill in, which is actually helping me a lot, because it's summarizing all the points, all the policies which I have to go through, on which I have to report. These are actually 350 KPIs which we have to measure on a monthly basis. Notice this. Here there is a slider going up and down to show you the amount. And here the red are only marked those which are most important. This is about half of them are the most important, all the rest they can let. This is already a lot.
For all the people coming in, there are questions at the end.
Sure.
Will be quizzed.
Okay, first 3 steps.
Okay, 3 steps important which we can easily achieve. First one is patch, because they are available remediations for already discovered vulnerabilities. Second one is patch again and patch again. That's why it is important, because these are all the steps which we are familiar to, which we have already automated themselves, and where we can gain and receive where we can fastly eliminate a lot of the exploits, vulnerabilities in our environments. I have here an example. I mentioned before, you were asking, how fast does it take for exploits to be written after the vulnerability is publicly disclosed? I have seen this example here, 0 to 10 days. 55 of here 150 exploits are already exploitable. Vulnerabilities are exploitable. This is a lot. 3 years ago, the peak would be here around 60 to 90 days. Nowadays, it's here, first couple of days after it is actually discovered or publicly available on the market, or the Microsoft by the Android and so on. Just still a couple of things. Here I have from the CVE database, which was mentioned already before in one of the lectures. I have the top numbers of vulnerabilities. You see the list is long, and there are many. Those are already also, some of them, they are already remediated, but they are still existing. I turned the list around as well for your information. From the 2018, this is only for the 2018, most vulnerable systems. And one thing I want you to notice is this. Does anybody know what this should be?
It's a webcam. It's a webcam, no?
IoT devices. Has anybody thought about securing IoT devices so far?
Straight way to hell with that.
I have to congratulate you. This is coming. This is important. And there are millions of them. And if we are just thinking about that those IoT devices can be misused for a kind of DDoS attack, we are... I will not continue. Okay. I'll go a bit faster through all of those things. Because I'm running out of time, supposedly.
You've run out of time, mate.
I have.
Carry on. Soldier on.
Okay. One thing I want you to show is here, where the things get interesting in the IT security, is when you're receiving the intelligence. This is information which nobody else actually has. This is from, in our group, we have an intelligence group, intelligence team, which is actually scanning the darknet. It's actually checking what's going in the wild. It's checking what the internet traffic is saying, and so on. And so we are getting such information as is here disclosed. I have only one example which I may show, since it was publicly shown. It's talking about the ATM attacks on the ATMs which are running Windows 7 environment. Okay? And it's explained how actually these things were misused. This is information I receive as a security professional well in advance as all other users, and this is something what gets interesting. This is going to happen. This is preparing. Those groups and squads are preparing the attacks. Russian guys are attacking Iranians, and so on and so on. Gets interesting. Believe me. Okay. Modus operandi here in those just 2 words in those cash machines. What they were actually doing, they were misusing the telnet vulnerability of those ATMs, and the guy who came in front of ATM gave a ring to somebody who was working in the background, and this one in the background made nothing else as cashed all the money out of the ATM. He took the money and went to the next cash machine. Nice payoff. Nice payoff. Nice payoff. Okay. User awareness I mentioned. I have to thank you for all the patience with me which you had, and that I took your time for the lunch. You can always get me still on the other channels. I will not always be here, or I am not always be here in the Athens. You're also not supposed to. We might meet on the next E2E. Here's my contact. Here's my Twitter handle. Sometimes I post or repost some interesting information. My mail information, and what I always say to the other guys is stay curious, keep your eyes open and watch what's happening around and learn something out of this. Thank you.